Hi, it's Amory. Welcome to Amory's Book Club, and I am here with the April selection for 2020, which is Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I love this book. I was intrigued by the premise. Kevin Wilson definitely did his job regarding what happens next, wanting to know what's on the next page. However, there's just so many truths about parenthood specifically. And I loved to watch the journey the main character took. In Nothing to See Here, Lillian, the main character, has had a really hard life. She's extremely smart. She was like a high flyer, destined to do great things in her small town. However, she hasn't had the greatest example when it comes to her mother, and then an incident happens in her boarding school that gets her kicked out and changes the trajectory of her life. While in school, she meets her best friend named Madison, who comes from a completely different kind of life. She's wealthy. They do share the love of basketball, and they also share little weird, what they call weird quirks, although I didn't feel like they were very weird. I don't know if that makes me weird. So there's a scandal at school. Lillian is kicked out. She and Madison don't have much contact after that. 10 years after the scandal, after leaving boarding school, Madison contacts her and she has a proposal. This proposal is that she helps Madison take care of her 2 stepkids. But there's a catch. Her husband's children have the tendency to spontaneously combust. That sounds really crazy. You know, if you study spontaneous combustion, there's usually no trace left of the person, well, other than maybe like their legs from the knee down or just some like really morbid stuff like that. We'll get into that in a second. But her children spontaneously combust and then they're able to go back to normal after that. She wants to know if Lillian will help come and take care of the kids. The main character isn't your typical protagonist. She isn't super friendly, super kind. She isn't good in the sense that we would think someone is good or bad, but she's so lovable. She's so easy to love because she really puts it all out there. I fell in love with the main character and I was rooting for her every step of the way. I was so invested in her journey. I was literally laughing out loud. Like I literally was drinking water one time and I spit it out because I was reading it while I was walking with my water. And in that same paragraph, like the next sentence, it will leave you teary. My emotions were a huge roller coaster, but it was so poignant because there's so many truths regarding parenthood in the story. You know, if you've had young children or just children at all, there's so many things that you're just like nodding your head to. But I think a lot of people could relate to what the main character is going through regarding feeling counted out. I think a lot of that stems from her own relationship with her mother, which I will share with you a passage. It really tore at my heart. It really, really hurt. So when Lillian gets this scholarship to this boarding school, it was very prestigious, her mother doesn't even really seem to care. You know, she's done this all on her own. Like she taught herself to read when she was 3 years old. She's super smart, super driven. She's a great basketball player, really well-rounded. And she also has a lot of intelligence when it comes to people. Like she can read people pretty well. However, her mother is just kind of just given up on life in general and has never been there for her daughter. So just before this passage, her mom's about to take her to school. She's gotten kicked out of her prestigious boarding school and her mom's about to take her to the school she went to before, and the car engine caught on fire. I'd walked over to her and held up the picture, but she just shook her head. "Look," she said, gesturing toward the engine. "Just look at it." I didn't know what she wanted me to see, if we could even see the same thing. "It's kind of pretty," she finally said, and we stood there watching the fire until she finally took the water from me and dumped it on the engine, which didn't do much of anything. "You don't have to go to school today," she said, she told me, sighing so deeply. "I'm not going to work." I nodded, smiling a little, because I thought maybe we'd spend the day together, go see a movie. But when we went back into the house, she lit up a cigarette and closed the door to her bedroom, locking me out, and I didn't see her until the next morning. And this was what I finally realized, that even as we sank deeper and deeper into our lives, we were always separate. And I wondered what it would feel like to fall but to hold on to someone else so you weren't alone. This just killed me, this passage, because it summed up so much of the loneliness that she's always felt and why she would be so attracted to Madison, a friendship she so desperately needed. And why, Anne explains what happens with the kids too. This book is so beautiful, so funny. Like I said, I was laughing in the same paragraph that I was tearing up. I loved reading every word. Kevin Wilson's prose is so... it just wraps you up in the story. I also find it interesting too that one of the moments that she really remembers with her mother is a moment in which the car engine is on fire, and then of course later on, 10 years later, she's being tasked to take care of children who spontaneously combust. I thought that was interesting. You never really read many books that deal with spontaneous combustion. When I was younger, I had a fixation on two things: killer bees and spontaneous combustion. I was super afraid that I would spontaneously combust. Like I would check myself, I would feel if I was ever feeling too hot. It was a good amount of time where I was thinking of that every single day. So when I saw that the author was super interested in spontaneous combustion, so much so that it occurs in his various works, I was super intrigued by that. Kevin Wilson deals with Tourette's, which is why he was thinking a lot about that when he was a kid, because he said that he felt energy building up within himself, and there was a point where he was afraid that this energy would build up and he would spontaneously combust. And of course he saw this like Time Life special magazine or booklet on spontaneous combustion. I feel like I might have seen that at some point, but I understand that because I was afraid of spontaneous combustion as well. Not as someone who has Tourette's, but I have dealt with OCD, which probably influenced why I was so fixated on spontaneous combustion and killer bees. I think OCD and Tourette's and depression, anxiety, all of these things, they tend to be in a very big, wide family. But when you're a kid dealing with OCD and you don't even know what OCD is and no one around you is even thinking about OCD, you just pick up all these different fixations that can really take over your entire day, or your night. But then you're able to channel certain things like that into your work, which is what Kevin Wilson did here in Nothing to See Here. So although the story deals with something like spontaneous combustion, the story is very grounded in parenthood and love and friendship and found family especially. I fell in love with this story. I fell in love with the main character. I highly recommend that you guys pick this up as soon as you can so you can join Kevin Wilson and I at the end of the month when we discuss Nothing to See Here. Definitely pick up the book. You probably want to pick up the ebook if you can, because it's a little easier to acquire ebooks right now where so many of us are staying inside. And follow along the hashtags, hashtag read with AMerie, hashtag AMERIE'S Book Club, and the Instagrams at AMERIE'S Book Club, at AMerie. Happy reading!